Go ahead and put the vehicle in drive. Let your foot off the brake, and let us begin the long, winding descent. We are rolling out of the parking lot of the Independence Mine State Historical Park, leaving behind the stark, red-painted wooden ruins of the bunkhouses and the massive, crumbling concrete foundations of the stamp mill. As we slowly navigate the rough dirt and gravel of Gold Cord Road, take one last look in your rearview mirror at the mine manager's beautiful, sprawling house sitting high on the ridge, an island of 1930s luxury surrounded by absolute desolation. We are starting this drive at roughly 3,500 feet above sea level, deep in the high alpine bowl of Hatcher Pass in the Talkeetna Mountains. Take a deep, deliberate breath of the air before we roll the windows up to block the wind. It is incredibly thin, shockingly dry, and carries a biting, unmistakable chill that smells exactly like pulverized granite and ancient ice. You are breathing the air of the high tundra, a place where winter holds absolute, terrifying dominion for 8 months of the year. The sheer, jagged, gray granite peaks towering over the windshield are the exposed bones of the earth. They were pushed up by unimaginable tectonic forces and carved over millions of years by rivers of solid ice. This entire, massive, sweeping U-shaped valley we are about to drive down was not cut by a river. It was bulldozed by a glacier, hundreds, perhaps thousands of feet thick during the last ice age. As we ease down the steep, intimidating grade of Gold Cord Road and transition back onto the smooth pavement of the Palmer Fishhook Road, I want you to think about the sheer, terrifying human effort it took to conquer this specific stretch of mountain. Long before this was a paved scenic byway designed for comfortable road trips, it was a brutal, treacherous, muddy supply trail. In the 1930s, this exact route was the absolute lifeline for the hundreds of men working in the dark, freezing tunnels of the Independence Mine. Imagine the logistics of trying to get massive iron jaw crushers, thousands of pounds of highly volatile dynamite, and endless wooden crates of food up this sheer mountain grade. They used primitive, underpowered tractors pulling massive reinforced wooden sledges. In the summer, the road was a bottomless, swallowing bog of glacial mud that would suck those tractors right down to their axles. Men had to use hand-cranked winches, block and tackle, and sheer, agonizing brute force to pull them out of the muck. In the winter, the reality was even worse. The road became a terrifying, icy gauntlet, constantly threatened by massive avalanches that could bury a supply train under 40 feet of concrete like snow in a matter of seconds. The men who drove those supply trains sat in unheated, open-air cabs, fighting through blinding, white-out blizzards, risking their lives every single day just to keep the gold flowing out of the mountain and the men in the camp from starving. When you feel the road curve and drop so smoothly beneath our tires today, appreciate the agonizing, back-breaking effort it took to first carve this path out of the raw rock. We are continuing our descent, hugging the steep side of the mountain. Look out the windows at the vast landscape surrounding us. We are currently above the tree line. The ground is a sweeping, vibrant expanse of alpine tundra. Because the winter winds here scream down off the glaciers at hurricane force, and the snowpack routinely exceeds 15 feet, tall trees simply cannot survive the crushing weight and the wind shear. Instead, the plants here survive by staying incredibly low to the ground, anchored tight to the thin soil. If you are driving this in the brief window of summer, the tundra is an absolute carpet of brilliant, overwhelming color. It is covered in bright pink fireweed, dark purple monkshood, dwarf alpine willows, and massive patches of wild blueberries. The plants are in a desperate, frantic, biological race against the clock to photosynthesize under the endless midnight sun before the killing frost returns in late August. But watch carefully as we continue to lose elevation. You are about to witness geography dictate biology in real time. As we drop lower and the air gets slightly thicker and warmer, you will start to see the first thick, stubborn tangles of green alder bushes clinging to the rocky slopes. Then, a few scattered, stunted, weather-beaten evergreen trees will appear. Within a matter of minutes, we are going to cross the invisible boundary of the tree line, leaving the open, sweeping tundra entirely behind and plunging directly into the dense, dark, continuous canopy of the boreal forest. We are now fully enveloped by the taiga, the largest land-based biome on planet Earth. The road is heavily flanked by thick stands of black spruce, white spruce, and peeling paper birch. Look closely at the spruce trees lining the deep ditches. You will notice that many of them are incredibly thin, scrawny, and leaning at chaotic, precarious angles. Locals lovingly call this a drunken forest. It happens because the ground beneath the thin layer of topsoil is often locked in permafrost, a layer of earth and gravel that remains permanently frozen year-round. The tree roots cannot penetrate the solid ice, so they are forced to spread out incredibly wide and shallow, creating a very weak anchor system. When the top layer of soil thaws and turns to wet, shifting mud in the warm summer months, the trees lose their footing and begin to tilt in all directions. It is a constant visual reminder that the earth here is living, moving, freezing, and shifting right beneath the asphalt. If you have a full car today, with the kids looking out the back windows, this is the absolute perfect time to give everyone in the vehicle a job. Make it a game, but a highly necessary one. Tell them to keep their eyes completely glued to the dark shadows between the spruce trees and the deep brush on the shoulders of the road. We are descending into prime, untouched wildlife territory, and the animals here do not recognize the authority of the road system, the painted lines, or the speed limit. This specific corridor is notorious for massive urban moose. An adult Alaskan moose is a staggering, prehistoric-looking animal. A large bull can stand over 7 feet tall at the shoulder, carrying antlers that span 6 feet across and weigh well over 1,400 pounds. Because their fur is incredibly dark, they act like massive, light-absorbing black holes on the side of the road, making them almost entirely invisible in the shadows or at twilight until they step directly into your path. They are completely fearless, highly unpredictable, and view this entire forest as their personal domain. If someone in the back seat spots a long, dark shadow moving in the trees, do not just tap the brakes. Be prepared to stop the vehicle completely. Hitting a 1,400-pound animal with such long legs means the entire massive body of the moose will bypass the bumper and crash directly through the windshield and into the passenger cabin. Vigilance on this winding mountain road is an absolute, non-negotiable requirement for everyone in the car. As we continue to wind our way down the Palmer Fishhook Road, roll your window down just a fraction if the weather allows it. You will hear the rushing, roaring, chaotic sound of the Little Susitna River, which is flowing violently through the woods just to our right. The Little Sioux originates high above us, pouring directly out of the melting, ancient face of the Mint Glacier. It carves its way down the granite, a roaring, opaque, dark gray torrent of water colored entirely by glacial flour. That incredibly fine rock dust is created by the crushing, relentless weight of the glaciers grinding against the mountain, and it stays suspended in the freezing water, completely obscuring the bottom. You cannot see an inch below the surface. Despite the freezing temperatures and the murky, opaque water, this river is a superhighway for one of the most incredible, heartbreaking biological migrations on Earth. In the late summer, this rushing water is absolutely choked with wild Pacific salmon. King, silver, and chum, salmon swim thousands of miles from the deep, nutrient-rich waters of the Pacific Ocean. They navigate past killer whales, seals, and massive commercial fishing nets to enter the Cook Inlet. They find the mouth of this exact river and begin an agonizing, grueling journey upstream against the massive glacial current. They are driven by a singular, overriding biological imperative to return to the exact stretch of gravel where they were hatched, lay their eggs, and die. When the salmon are running, this forest becomes incredibly active and highly dangerous. Massive brown bears and black bears descend from the high mountains and gather along the banks of the Little Sioux to feast. A large grizzly bear desperately needs to consume tens of thousands of calories a day in the late summer to build up the massive layer of fat required to survive a 7-month winter hibernation in a dark, freezing den. They will wade directly into the freezing rapids, snatch the exhausted salmon out of the current with their jaws, and drag them into the woods. They often eat only the most calorie-dense parts, like the skin, the roe, and the brain, leaving the rest of the carcass to rot on the forest floor. This decaying fish matter acts as a massive natural fertilizer, injecting vital, rich ocean nutrients directly into the root systems of these spruce and birch trees. The entire ecosystem of the forest you are driving through right now, from the eagles in the branches to the roots in the soil, is entirely, perfectly dependent on the death of those incredible fish. We are continuing to follow the road as it begins to level out, finally leaving the steep, aggressive mountain grades behind. The road straightens and the dense forest occasionally breaks, offering sweeping, panoramic views of the vast valley floor ahead. We have officially descended from the untamed vertical wilderness of Hatcher Pass and are now entering the sprawling, agricultural heartland of the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, known universally to Alaskans as the Mat-Su. We are approaching a major intersection marked by modern, nicely landscaped roundabouts. This area is known as the Farm Loop. We are going to navigate smoothly through the roundabout and head south onto North Trunk Road. As we make this transition, take a long look at the landscape out your windows. The jagged granite peaks and the rushing glacial rivers have been replaced by wide-open, flat fields, red-roofed barns, wooden fences, and massive patches of thick forest. It looks like a peaceful, standard rural farming community, but farming in this specific valley was born out of one of the most desperate, audacious, and wildly experimental federal projects in American history. To understand the massive fields lining Trunk Road today, we have to travel back in time to the year 1935. The United States was suffering through the absolute darkest, most crushing depths of the Great Depression. In the Midwestern states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, the economy had completely collapsed. A massive, devastating drought had ruined the soil, turning farms to dust, and thousands of hard-working, proud farming families were facing absolute starvation and complete financial ruin. They were losing everything. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his New Deal administration came up with a radical, unprecedented, and highly controversial plan to save a select few of these families. They took 203 of the most impoverished farming families from the Midwest, put them on trains across the entire country, loaded them onto steamships in Washington state, and relocated them thousands of miles north to this exact, wild, uncleared valley in the remote territory of Alaska. The federal government promised them 40 to 80 acres of wild land, a basic house, and the chance to start their lives over completely from scratch. Imagine the absolute shock and terror of those families arriving here in May of 1935. They did not find welcoming farmhouses or neatly plowed fields waiting for them. The government bureaucracy in Washington was completely unprepared for the brutal reality of the Alaskan wilderness. There were no houses built. The families, including pregnant women and small, terrified children, were forced to live in a muddy, sprawling city of canvas army tents while it rained constantly, without end, for weeks. The environment was completely alien and entirely hostile. The mosquitoes were apocalyptic, rising from the damp, ancient earth in suffocating, blinding clouds that drove the livestock mad. The colonists had to frantically race against the clock. They had to physically hack down massive, deep-rooted spruce trees by hand, using draft horses and highly dangerous dynamite to clear the massive stumps from the earth. They were desperately trying to build log cabins before the lethal, freezing Alaskan winter arrived to claim them. It was a scenario of extreme, unimaginable hardship. The winters here dropped to 30 and 40 degrees below zero. The isolation was crushing, and many families simply could not handle the sheer terror and the back-breaking labor of fighting the wilderness. Dozens of families broke down, surrendered their land, and fled back to the lower 48 on the first boats they could afford. But the ones who stayed, the stubborn, incredibly resilient pioneers who fought the land and won, fundamentally changed this state forever. As you drive past these wide-open, beautiful fields on Trunk Road, you are driving past the literal, hard-fought legacy of their survival. And those resilient colonists discovered something absolutely incredible about this valley that made all the suffering worthwhile. The soil, composed of rich, wind-blown glacial loess, was incredibly fertile. But the real magic, the thing that defied all traditional agricultural logic, was the sky above our vehicle. Because we are situated so incredibly far north, this valley receives nearly 20 hours of direct, relentless, blazing sunlight a day during the absolute peak of the summer. That endless midnight sun causes the crops to grow at a frantic, terrifying rate. The plants literally do not sleep. They photosynthesize around the clock in a desperate rush to mature before the frost returns. Because of this endless light, this valley produces absolute mutant giant vegetables. It is world famous for massive heads of green cabbage that weigh 138 pounds, cantaloupes the size of beach balls, and carrots that look like heavy wooden baseball bats. The colonists took a desperate, muddy gamble in a freezing wilderness and successfully turned this valley into the thriving, giant vegetable-producing breadbasket of the last frontier. We are continuing south on Trunk Road, navigating through another modern traffic circle. We are going to take the exit to transition onto East Bogard Road. We will only be on Bogard for a very short stretch, about a mile, passing through a couple more roundabouts. This rapid succession of traffic circles and newly paved, multi-lane roads is a glaring, unavoidable sign of how rapidly the Mat-Su Valley is changing and expanding. For decades, Palmer and the neighboring town of Wasilla were small, quiet, isolated farming communities where everyone knew everyone else. But as the city of Anchorage, located 40 miles south, ran out of physical space to grow, locked tightly between the ocean and the mountains, thousands of people began migrating north to the valley. They came seeking larger plots of land, cheaper housing, and a quieter way of life to raise their families. That massive population boom has transformed these once quiet dirt farming roads into bustling, high-speed commuter corridors. As we reach the next roundabout, we are going to take the exit onto North 49th State Street, heading south. We are on the final approach to the commercial heart of the valley. This short connector road is going to drop us directly onto the East Palmer-Wasilla Highway. Go ahead and make the left turn onto the Palmer-Wasilla Highway, heading east toward the center of Palmer. Settle in, because the contrast you are about to experience is one of the most jarring, surreal elements of modern Alaska. Just an hour ago, we were standing at 3,500 feet in the alpine tundra, looking at the haunting, wooden ruins of a 1930s gold mine, surrounded by glaciers, howling winds, and absolute pristine wilderness. Now, you are driving down a massive, heavily trafficked, multi-lane commercial highway. The Palmer-Wasilla Highway, known to every single local up here simply as the P-Dub, is the absolute epicenter of suburban sprawl in the Mat-Su Valley. Look out your windows. The pristine forests and the historic, hand-cleared potato fields have been completely replaced by an endless, unbroken parade of strip malls, massive big-box hardware stores, drive-through coffee huts, fast food chains, auto repair shops, and towering neon signs. This is the reality of living on the modern frontier. Alaska is a land of extreme, whiplash-inducing contrasts. You can spend your morning hiking in a trackless wilderness where you are no longer at the top of the food chain, fighting off swarms of mosquitoes and looking for grizzly bear tracks in the mud. And then, you can get in your car, drive 30 minutes down a paved road, and find yourself sitting in dead-stopped traffic, staring at a massive, glowing corporate logo. The wild and the heavily commercialized exist right on top of each other here, pressing against one another in a constant, uneasy tension. The people who live in this valley rely heavily on this commercial corridor. Living in Alaska requires massive amounts of specialized gear. You need heavy-duty snow tires with metal studs, engine block heaters, sub-zero sleeping bags, chainsaws for firewood, and massive amounts of non-perishable food to survive the long, dark, crushing winters. The massive stores lining the P-Dub provide the logistical lifeline that allows normal people to survive in a place that actively tries to freeze them for 8 months of the year. We are driving east on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway for roughly 2.5 miles. The traffic here can be incredibly aggressive, especially in the winter when the asphalt turns into a polished sheet of ice covered in crushed gravel. It is a constant, deafening chorus of metal studs grinding against the pavement and loose rocks cracking against windshields. But today, we are just cruising smoothly, watching the modern world slide by, heading toward the historic core of Palmer. Keep your eyes peeled for the upcoming intersection. We are looking for West Roland Memorial Way. We are going to make a right turn onto Roland Memorial Way, pulling off the busy, multi-lane highway, and as soon as we make that turn, we are going to make one final, immediate right turn into the parking lot. As you sit here in Palmer, finishing up your food and watching the traffic roll by, I want to take a step back and talk about the broader picture of where you are. You have driven through a lot of different Alaskan landscapes today, but Palmer itself holds a very specific, unique identity in this state. If you were to drive 10 miles down the highway to Wasilla, you would find endless suburban sprawl, massive intersections, and a town built almost entirely around the automobile. But Palmer is different. Palmer actually has a heart. If you were to leave this parking lot and drive just a few blocks into the historic downtown grid, you would see a town that has stubbornly held onto its 1930s pioneer roots. The streets are highly walkable. The old wooden colony houses still stand, neatly restored, right next to local bakeries, independent bookstores, and coffee shops. Towering right over the center of downtown is the old Palmer Water Tower, a rusted, iconic beacon that reminds everyone exactly where this town came from. Palmer does not feel like a gold rush town, and it does not feel like a coastal fishing village. It feels like a Midwestern farming community that was simply picked up by a tornado and dropped directly at the base of a 6,000-foot jagged mountain. And that unique agricultural identity culminates in one massive, statewide event right here in this town. Just a few miles down the road from where you are sitting are the Alaska State Fairgrounds. Every year, in late August, this quiet farming town completely explodes. Hundreds of thousands of Alaskans travel from every corner of the state, driving down from Fairbanks, flying in from remote bush villages, and pouring in from Anchorage. They gather in Palmer for one final, massive, frantic celebration before the darkness and the crushing cold of the winter officially set in. The Alaska State Fair is unlike any other fair in the country. Yes, it has the carnival rides, the deep-fried food, and the concerts, but the backdrop is the massive, brooding, glaciated face of Pioneer Peak. And the main attractions are not just the rides. They are the agricultural exhibits. People crowd into the giant crop pavilions to see the legendary mutant vegetables grown under the midnight sun. You will see farmers proudly displaying 100-pound cabbages, pumpkins the size of small cars, and massive, towering stalks of celery. It is a bizarre, beautiful celebration of human stubbornness, a collective cheer for the people who manage to coax absolute abundance out of a freezing, unforgiving earth. But beyond the giant vegetables and the historic downtown, Palmer serves as a perfect microcosm for the broader psychology of Alaska. There is a specific kind of person who chooses to live in this state. Alaskans often joke that everyone who moves up here is either running away from something or running towards something. It is a magnet for the restless, the independent, and the people who chafe against the heavily regulated, crowded confines of the lower 48. When you cross the border into Alaska, you are entering the last frontier, and that is not just a clever slogan stamped on the license plates. It is a daily, physical reality. This state is 1/5 the size of the entire United States, but it has a population smaller than most mid-sized American cities. The vast, overwhelming majority of this landmass is entirely untouched by human hands. There are no roads, no power grids, no cell phone towers, just millions upon millions of acres of spruce forest, alpine tundra. Living on the edge of that immense, untamed wilderness fundamentally changes a person. It breeds an incredible sense of self-reliance. You have to know how to fix your own truck when it breaks down in 30 below weather. You have to know how to split firewood, how to properly dress in layers so you do not freeze to death, and how to carry yourself in territory that is ruled by massive brown bears. There is a harsh, unforgiving pragmatism to life up here. The environment simply does not care if you are rich, poor, famous, or obscure. If you make a foolish mistake on a glacier, on a freezing river, or on a desolate stretch of highway in the winter, the earth will simply claim you without a second thought. Yet, paradoxically, that exact same harsh environment breeds one of the tightest, most fiercely loyal communities you will ever find. Because the elements are so actively trying to kill you, Alaskans rely on each other to an extraordinary degree. If you slide your car into a snowy ditch on a dark winter night, you will not be sitting there for long. The very first truck that passes you will absolutely stop. A stranger will jump out in the freezing wind, hook a heavy tow strap to your bumper, pull you out of the ditch, and wave goodbye before you can even offer them a $20 bill. It is an unwritten, ironclad law of the North. You help your neighbor because tomorrow, you might be the one in the ditch, and you will need them to stop for you. As you sit here in Palmer, feeling the cool breeze coming off the Talkeetna Mountains, think about the incredible transition of the seasons that dictates life in this state. If you are using this stop to catch your breath before pushing further north up the park's highway, aiming your compass toward the towering, snow-capped peaks of Denali National Park for a summer adventure, you are experiencing the state in its most manic, glorious phase. The midnight sun is blazing, the rivers are rushing, the wildlife is constantly moving, and the energy is absolutely electric. You can hike at midnight and read a book outside at 2 in the morning. But that light is a fleeting, precious commodity. In a few short months, the axis of the Earth will tilt. The sun will begin to rapidly sink toward the horizon, losing minutes of daylight every single afternoon. The massive flocks of sandhill, cranes, and geese will take to the sky, fleeing south in V formations. The birch trees will turn brilliant yellow, drop their leaves, and stand bare against the gray sky. And then, the snow will come. When the deep winter hits, the state completely transforms. The tourists leave, the RVs are parked, and the true Alaskans settle in for the long haul. The world shrinks down to the illuminated space, created by your headlights and the warm glow of your wood stove. The days become incredibly short, with the sun barely cresting the mountains before plunging the world back into darkness. It is a time of intense isolation, but also profound, quiet beauty. The frantic energy of the summer is replaced by the silent, shimmering explosion of the aurora borealis, dancing across a pitch-black, star-filled sky. Alaska is a land of terrifying, beautiful extremes. It is a place that will break you if you fight it, but if you respect the weather, the wildlife, and the sheer scale of the landscape, it will offer you an experience of the natural world that exists nowhere else on this continent. It demands your absolute attention, and in return, it gives you moments of raw, unfiltered awe. So finish your coffee, put your hands back on the steering wheel, and pull back out onto the highway. The road ahead is long, the mountains are calling, and the last frontier is waiting for you to explore it.